reverse side. It's the way it does it.
So you were referred to me by a mutual friend of ours, Ari Weinswig. Talk to me about how you two met and some of the work you guys have done together.
Ari and I met back in 2008. We were at an Inc. conference. I think it was in DC. He was speaking and I was out there doing some stuff, and we started talking on one of the breaks about the work that we were each doing. And I was sharing with him how we're using energy in organizations and with leaders in particular. And he went, "Oh my gosh, wait a second, hold on. How have we not thought about this before?" So Ari and I struck up. I mean, obviously, you know Ari. He's got incredible energy. He's one of the most phenomenal humans and leaders I've ever met in my life. So we started up this really great conversation, really great friendship, and then we were able to bring the work, which is now called the IEP work, which stands for Intentional Energetic Presence. We were able to bring that to the ZCOB, and to just, it's been 2008. What is that? 16 years now, 17 years now. It's been a long time. So he also wrote the foreword for my most recent book, Contagious You. So they've been really playing with it for a while.
And so when people find out, these people that are working 80 to 100 hours a week, just in grueling conditions, when they find out that this episode is about energy, you would think that the natural inclination would be to say, well, I don't have time for that. I'm going to go do something else. But I want to thread a needle here because I think that it's super valuable for the folks listening. When I interviewed Ari last, one of the questions that I asked him is, how do you deal with burnout? Like how do you manage it? How do you overcome it? Because we all find ourselves there at some point. To which he said in his very Ari way, that's not true. I don't get burnout. I was like, never, ever. And he's like, never, ever. It's like I control my energy. And what I found is the things that suck energy from me, that's what creates the burnout. So I'm sensitive to it and I avoid it at all costs. And then, I nodded my head and I walked away from it. And I was like, oh, what sucks energy out of me? And what gives me energy? And I mean, we inventory dry goods 10 times a week, but do we actually inventory our energy levels? And so I would ask you, like, how do you believe energy works in a professional environment? And how can we high level optimize for a better outcome?
Well, I think energy is everything in a professional environment. I think that, if you think about the way, like, let's just take it, there's internal energy. So the energy that I have for myself, which Ari is talking about in terms of not burning out. So my internal energy, there's my physical energy, there's my mental energy. There's also my vibrational energy, what I'm actually putting out into the world. So if you look at internal energy, it's how I feel, how I'm experiencing my own energy levels. It's what I'm taking on and letting myself get exhausted by, or not. And then external energy is actually what is the impact I'm having on the people around me by the way that I'm showing up, by the energy I'm putting out there. So especially in your industry, this is really, really important because you are all running around like crazy doing all these different things in this, in restaurants and whatnot. And if the people who are in front of your customers are not showing up with good energy, that has a humongous impact on your customer turn rate, right?
For sure. For me, I fancy myself a professional marketer. And I think that that's what made me successful as a restaurateur. But I also had this thing that I think we all have that I just tuned into it really early, which was like when I'm in a good mood, everybody in my restaurant's in a good mood. When I'm in a bad mood, everyone in my restaurant's out to get me. Maybe I was more sensitive to it. Maybe I project a little bit more than others. But how do you tune in? What are the skills? What are the tools that you have to adopt to tune in to even figure out like what that energy you're putting out is doing in your life?
Yeah, well, I always say this work is 70% awareness and it's 30% what you do with it. So most people, if they don't have awareness of their energy, they don't have awareness of how what they're doing or how they're showing up is impacting their misery. If they don't have awareness of that, then we tend to suffer and struggle through it. We don't understand. We don't know what we don't know. The minute we have awareness of, oh, my energy has impact, my presence, how I'm showing up has impact. The minute I have awareness of this, I'm 70% of the way there. And now I just need the other 30% to actually do something about it. So tuning in is as simple as paying attention to my body and my energy shifts, like paying attention to how do I actually feel? when I'm in a conversation with another person, am I feeling expansive and lit up and clear, or am I actually feeling really contracted and tight and like I don't want to be in this situation? That's energy. If I'm talking to somebody and I start to feel myself getting tired, I'm taking on their energy, right? When I walk into a room, if I'm not feeling good, to your point, if I'm not feeling good and I'm really contracted and in a bad mood, I come in, I'm contagious, I project that out, they're going to start to catch that. So there's a phrase in this work, which is that the lowest vibration in the room will win, unless somebody, and that's you if you've got this awareness, is good at holding their energetic state. If you can hold your energetic state and not get sucked into that, then most times people will actually step up to meet you.
I feel like a huge part of this has to be authenticity, right? Not just visibility, but authenticity. And I think most restaurant owners and operators think leadership is about being the strongest person in the room. Why do you think that's a dangerous misunderstanding of what leadership really is?
Because if you look at it energetically, if you're the strongest person in the room and that's not real, if you're not coming from a place of congruency, people feel that. People can feel that. So it gets experienced. Even if they don't know what's going on, we are constantly reading each other, and we're picking up on energy of congruency or incongruency or congruency. So if I go in as a leader and I've got to be the strongest person in the room and I don't really feel that way, I'm actually projecting insecurity and force. That is not a compelling that's not a compelling way to lead. And what that will produce will be people who are following me because they have to, not because they actually want to. Versus if I go in from a really authentic state, I can still be an incredibly powerful, strong leader and be in a place of vulnerability or not being sure or saying to the team, hey, this is really scary what's happening right now, or we just had a really bad month or a bad quarter. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but let's figure it out together. That is such more powerful energy and leadership coming from that place that people will be able to feel the truth. Like the highest energetic state is vibration, the highest energetic vibration is authenticity. And we are reading it all the time. And we know when somebody is not authentic and when they are. We might not know exactly what's going on, but we feel it. So
Life hack for me was beginning to look internally. It's not just because I'm Jewish, but I've always assumed everything is my fault. Um, and so, a lot of owners and managers, they look at the conditions of today's restaurant employees and they say, well, this generation is just lazy. And in, doing a lot of research for this interview and researching, your belief systems and what you advocate for, you think that the real problem is how leaders show up. And so for the people that think their place is just packed with lazy employees, what do they need to see that they're missing?
I would first, it's I love it that you're bringing that up, because when we point our finger out at other people, we've got three fingers pointing back at us. So I might have a workforce or employees that are struggling with things, or maybe they're not that driven, or maybe their accountability is really not great, and they may not be a good fit for the team, for sure. That I'm not saying that doesn't exist. However, the first place I want to look is, how am I actually leading? How am I actually coming? Am I inspiring accountability? Am I inspiring good work ethic? Am I showing up in a way that is real, that is effective in communicating with my employees about how I would like them to be showing up? If I'm just automatically going to, oh, everyone's lazy, or this generation, or all the things that you and I, I'm sure, could go into for quite a while. If I'm just kind of defaulting to that, I'm actually the lazy one.
Sure.
I'm the lazy one. So I think whether it's this in any industry, any leader, and I've been running this work for 23 years, any human being, any industry, any person who wants to lead effectively, the minute you're noticing that something is not going the way you want it to go, that is your opportunity to step into 100% accountability and go, okay, how am I actually contributing to this? What's the littlest thing I could do to start to shift this? And so often it's just that awareness that will be the magic little lever that starts to switch things. Because the minute I start to take accountability as a leader, that is contagious too, and my people will pick up on that.
Well, and you also talk about like open door policies, right? And how open, and I can say it, for me, I always had an open door policy. I actually hosted office hours every week that people could go to whenever they had a question or a problem in their personal life or their professional life outside of the restaurant. And nobody showed up. And I just let it go for months, probably 6 months. And the problem was that they just wouldn't use it. That's what I thought. Not that I didn't need to make more of an effort to show them that I am there for them and to serve them and to support them. And you have a lot of opinions on this. You say that like having an open door policy that is not actually used by your employees is a telltale sign that despite whatever you're saying to them, they don't actually feel comfortable bringing you their problems, right?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes that can be it. I mean, I think if I've got an open door policy and nobody's coming to me, I think the first place I'm going to want to look is coming from a place of curiosity, like, huh, it's really interesting. We got this open door policy. We have our values around our walls. I've said how important it is to me that people come to me directly. They can give me feedback. They can talk to me about anything, but they're not doing it. So what's in the gap? And the first place I'm going to look is there a way that what I say is important is not actually true with how I'm showing up? So when employees come to me with feedback, am I actually shutting them down? Am I making them wrong? Am I complaining about it? Am I not taking accountability? Because one of the best ways to get people to not come to your door for an open policy is to have them say something to you and have the courage to come talk to you. And then you either blame somebody else, you don't take accountability for it, or worse, you make them wrong for it. So that would be one place to look, is like, huh, am I showing up in a way that actually I'm saying this is important, but there's something that's not in alignment? Then the other thing, if you really find that actually checks out, like, no, I actually really am doing that, would be to go to my people and say, hey, I'm noticing we've had these open door policies. I've asked you guys for feedback. Nobody's coming to me with feedback. What's getting in the way? Is there a different forum we want to do this in? Is there a reason why you're not coming to me? Like, I really, really, really want to know. And so you can engage with them in a really authentic way of like, hey, I really want you guys to talk to me, and you're not talking to me. And I'm trying not to take it personally, but if I've got a blind spot, I'd really like to know.
But again, even for them to answer that question implies some inherent level of trust,
Yeah.
which leads me to the next question, which is how do you foster trust, authentic trust with, especially in our industry? And I mean, you've done a ton with Zingerman's, but like a third of the people that work for you are lifers, and the other 2/3, the happiest day of their life, regardless of how much they like the job or not, will be the day that they quit to move on to the thing they actually want to do. So how do you foster trust with a bunch of people that are just passing through?
Well, I think for me that it always comes down to presence. For me, trust starts with the leader, or I mean, I think everybody's a leader, so I'm just going to keep talking about leaders, but the leader especially, being really present and being authentic about who they are. I think trust also comes from a leader being willing to say, I don't know the answer to this, or I'm having a really hard time, or, to your question earlier, if I walk and I think I have to be tough all the time, that actually does not foster trust. I think, leaders following through on what they say that they're going to do and really living by the values. You can have, I write about this a lot, you can have values and vision and what's important to you all over the place. But actually, Ari says this all the time, a value is not really a value until it's cost you something. So that's where you foster trust. If your company goes through something hard, the team goes through something hard, and let's face it, everybody goes through something like all the time, right? And so if you are not living in alignment with your values around that, and you're not actually making the harder decisions, that's breaking trust. So to me, it is trust. To me, trust is a moment to moment thing that is built or taken away from, built or broken down. Our presence is a huge part of that. And then the other piece to be paying attention to is the more trust I have in myself, the more trust I will create with the people around me. So you have a lot of people who have a problem with being trusted by their workforce or by their employees, and they can't figure out why. And there's some really obvious reasons, right? Like they don't talk directly, they're going by, like there's really obvious reasons. But one of the more nuanced reasons why employees will sometimes not trust a leader is because the leader actually doesn't have a lot of self-trust in themselves. Like their level of self. If I don't trust myself to follow through on what I say I'm going to do, you're going to pick up on that in some way. You might not know exactly, oh, well, Anese doesn't trust herself, but you're going to pick up on that incongruency. So you're building your relationship. This is part of the IEP work. When we work with people, we call it the essential you, but it's like building your relationship with yourself first. So you can totally trust yourself. That's actually where your trust and your impact will hugely start. It's foundational.
I feel like your spider sense is probably tuned a little bit better than most. And you work with leaders across many industries. And I'm curious to know, when you physically step into a business, whether it's a restaurant or any business, what are those first subtle energy signals that tell you what kind of culture exists there?
Such a good question.
I'm looking for the cheat codes here.
Oh, so good. Well, and here I just want to say this could be in person, because it could also be on Zoom. It could also be on screen. You could see it. So first of all, you feel it. So being tuned in, everybody can feel energy. Some people might hear this and go, I don't know about this energy stuff. I can't feel it. I promise you can feel it. You walk into a room and you feel tension. That's just energy. You have a conversation, you start to feel tired. That's energy. You have a conversation, you feel so lifted up after. That's energy. So one, you can feel when you go into a Zoom meeting or into an actual environment, you can feel the weight of what's happening in that room. Other things, more obvious things that I'll pick up on will be people being careful, people, not pushing back. I get really nervous for companies when their employees don't actually push back or give hard feedback. People being quiet in meetings. A lot of behind the scenes, like crosstalk, a lot of like, you have the meeting and you go, okay, does anybody have anything else to say? And I was like, nope, we're good. And then you leave and they're like, oh my gosh, the meeting that happens after the meeting, a lot of that will be happening. The other thing that will happen is there's a statistic, and I don't know if this applies to restaurant businesses, but this was corporations that just came out recently. And I believe it is 42%, no, 45% of people that leave their jobs report that the company could have done something about it to have kept them there. Okay. And most of the times it has to do with the relationship with the leaders. But what was interesting about the statistic was that of that, and it might be 44%, but of that, only 1 out of 3 of them actually said anything to their supervisor or their leader that they weren't happy. But 44% of them talked to everybody else about how unhappy they were and then left.
Wow.
Right? Like that's a big, that actually, the reason why I'm not perfect on the quotation is because I literally gave a keynote 2 weeks ago and that stat came out right as I was going on stage. So it hasn't anchored in my brain yet, but I know the 1 out of 3 for sure, only 1 out of 3 actually say, I'm not happy. I need help.
It's very sobering. Very, very sobering.
It's very sobering. So you'll see that. One of the things you'll see, to your question about like, what are the other things that you'll see that a company's having a hard time getting people motivated. And you can feel the energy of like, oh my gosh, we got to do this again, or kind of phoning it in, or they're doing the bare minimum. You can also feel the energy of people who are like, I am here for this and I'm going to give 100%. And I'm going to go the extra mile. Like you feel that when you walk into an organization. You can see it in something as short as a team meeting.
Let's unpack that a little more. So it's, I talk to owners, operators, literally every day of my life. And so many of them are focused on hiring better people. The mistake that I made was not hiring great people. So like what I'm going to do is remedy this situation by hiring better people, whatever that means. But what's a leadership shift that they could make instead with the people they already have to make those people show up differently?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is what we've been talking about. I mean, I think one, just even before you're hiring people, are you really clear about what you're hiring for and the criteria you're looking for? I would just offer that as like a back pocket thing, because the more solid you are there, the easier it's going to be to hire good people. But if you've hired them, this is very common what you're talking about. We see this in every industry, right? There's companies do entire layoffs thinking, well, we'll just bring in the next group of people and they'll be better. And then, leadership stayed, we got the same problem. So, we take ourselves with us wherever we go. So if you keep hiring bad people, you're the common denominator.
Right? If you keep dating crazy people.
You met these, oh my gosh, I always date the worst guys.
Oh my God, that was me. That was me in my 20s.
Right. Like and here's the thing. I share this with like so much excitement and love, because if we're the common denominator, that means we can.
For sure.
So I would much rather see a pattern where I keep doing the same thing over and over. And trust me, I have my patterns. I would much rather do that, because I go, oh, hey, it's me. What is it? Taylor Swift song? Hey, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Right?
Yeah.
To do something about that. So one is just the awareness and the ownership of it. You keep hiring bad people, then how are you contributing to that? What's not checking out? Now that you've got that awareness, You can actually look at the people you do have and go, okay, what do we need to do? We need to do a reset. Okay, guys, we're going to get together. Here's, whether it's as a team or it's one-on-one, here's the reset. You know what? I realize I have not been the most awesome leader or manager to you. Let's reset this. Here's my expectations. Here's what you can count on me from. Let's go. And that changes the conversation because you're in there with them then.
Well, it also creates vulnerability. One of the things that I found in the early days of the show was that, like, if I started the show by being vulnerable, whether I ended up airing it or not, it created a more open environment for honest communication. When I would sit in pre-shifts with my team, instead of saying, this is what we're doing, this is what it's going to be, and let me know feedback, I would say, look, this is what we did last month that didn't perform particularly well. Here's what I thought was going to happen, and here's what actually happened. Is that what you saw? Is that what you felt? And then you urge that participation with all of my clients. I advocate for a very specific kind of pre-shift meeting because it's always one-to-many communication. It's broadcasting out as opposed to like engagement. But it's the only way you're able to bring out the information that you need to get from people in order to improve your business is by fostering trust. And typically it's whoever trust falls first, right? Sets the tone.
Yeah. I have to tell you, there's another thing I just want to offer it for your people. I call it the container game. Okay. So the container game relates to those bad hires or how do you get your team to show up fully. Again, this always comes back to self-awareness first. How am I contributing? How am I contributing? So years ago, I made up this game. I call it the container game. And the container game is basically the size of the container we hold for other people has a humongous impact on who they're going to become and how they're going to show up. For example, if I as the manager, I'm looking at my people as bad employees, I am basically holding a tiny little container for them. Oh, George is not going to be able to do this. Oh, George is a bad employee. My regard for him is very low. That's very low energy. That's a very low vibration state. George is going to show up as big as I'm holding that space for him. If I think George is a loser, George is going to start to show up more as a loser, right? So
for sure.
As my work, that is my work to do on the container game. So the container game basically has the leader look at everybody that works for them and go, all right, who's George? What do I appreciate about George? What do I see is possible for George? What do I think he's like? Where could he go in his career? What's his next 3 steps? What does George do incredibly well? What's getting in George's way? How can I be helpful to that? And you go through this set of questions, and when you're doing it, George doesn't even need to know. You just did it for George. And then what ends up happening, Josh, is that when people come to, when the manager comes back to George, his energy is shifted because he's now holding a bigger container for George. And I remember I was working with a design organization many years ago, and we had a leader who was responsible for 67 people in their studio. And he went through and he did the container game for every single person in the studio. It was 4 questions he did. He never even told any of them. But what he said happened was his ability to regard them differently changed, and their workforce shifted. The energy of the workforce shifted. Now you could go like, let's just say I do the container game for George and I realize, oh, wow, I'm really actually holding him in a really negative regard. Can I fix that? Is there feedback I need to give to him? You're going to get so much good information out of that. And then I might actually go to George and say, hey, George, this is what I see is possible for you. This is what you're doing so great at. Here are some things I see are really getting in your way. I want to be helpful. That changes George's level of engagement and his excitement for working for you. And it also frees up your energy as the leader because now you're no longer trying to hold on and manipulate stuff and thinking that everyone around you is a bad hire.
Something that keeps coming up with almost everything that you say is this idea that you lead through curiosity, right? Is it my fault? How do I see George? What could George do better? How can I support George better? How does that translate to day-to-day operations for most leaders? How do they show up curious and effective in a way that resonates with their teams?
It's great. It's a great question. I think that to me, curiosity is a state of being that, we lead through our day-to-day. We can't be thinking all the time, I'm so curious, I'm so curious, I'm so curious. But a trigger, I think that's really important when we really want to invoke curiosity is when we get irritated or we get judgmental or we get mad about something, I think that right there, this is why it's so important to be paying attention to your own energy and your relationship with yourself, because the more you pay attention to what's happening for yourself, the more you're going to sense that contraction of like, uh-oh, I'm starting to get really mad about what's happening. Uh-oh, I'm going to lose my temper right now. That right there is a cue to stop, pause, do a little bit of a reboot, and then get curious, like, how might I handle this differently? What might be going on that this keeps happening? Yeah, I think curiosity is as an energetic state we will often go into that stops us from having a negative impact that we might have had in a reactive state.
So let's talk about those energy shifts. So I clued into energy when I became a new parent, because nothing will grate on you like a newborn. Yes, you love it, but you love it less at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when you've been up every 45 minutes. And what I found is when I walk into the room and I've just had enough, right? Physically, my behavior doesn't change at all because there are laws around that, right? But emotionally, I'm a very different person. And what I found, and it actually translated into my work life as well, is in those moments where I'm fed up, what made the most sense was to stop what I was doing, exit the room, work to shift my energy, and then represent. Now, understand whether we're talking about a 6,000 square foot restaurant or a 6 month old baby, it's a dumpster fire. It's still burning in the other room. Nothing has changed about that. But the way that I re enter the room made things more tolerable for not just me, but the people in the restaurant and for my daughter as well, who is still alive all these years later. And so I would ask you, like, what are the tools in your toolbox to shift energy so that we can begin to control our states?
Oh my gosh, we have so many of them. We have so many of them. We spend 2 days at a time digging into these with leaders at a really embodied level. But I'll just give you a couple of them right off the bat. One is just doing an energy check. So just the minute you notice, like your ability to, how old's your daughter, by the way?
She's 6. We're going to be 7 in May.
We're gonna be 7 in May. Okay, well, good job.
She's a big girl. She's a big girl.
That's a big age. That's big.
It is. She's basically 17.
Right. I had one of those. Mine's now 19. But yes, I had a 7-year-old that was almost 17. Anyway, okay. So a couple things. Energy check. So the minute you're noticing, like, brilliant, you're noticing, oh, my energy is really off. I'm gonna have negative impact here on this little baby or these customers or my staff, whoever it might be. So you check in. The number one tool is to pause. To pause. It sounds so simple, but actually it's an art form to be able to capture it and have the self discipline to pause, take a deep breath, get into your body, and to notice, okay, how do I want to respond in this moment? If you can leave the room like you did, or go to the bathroom, or go step out in the alley or whatever, if you can get out of there and do a reboot, that's lovely, but we can't always do that. So just that pause and that moment is the first part. The second part is to set your intention now for how you actually want to show up. So I'm in the moment. Let's just say you and I right now, we're having this conversation. You say something, I get really, my feelings get hurt, I get triggered, I get activated, whatever. I think, okay, Josh, hold on, I gotta take a time out and I gotta reboot and everything. I might be able to do that. However, most times in the moment, that doesn't happen. So for me, it then becomes, okay, pause, take a deep breath, notice what just happened, get reconnected to my intention. My intention is to be of service. My intention is to be helpful. My intention is to be present. As soon as I'm reconnected to my intention, that is going to tell me what I need to do with my energy. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, and then there's other things you can look at. So there's an energy check, and an energy check, you just check your physical energy, your mental energy, and your vibrational energy, which is basically, how am I feeling? How present am I up here? And how am I actually showing up? That's a really quick check. There's a reboot, which is I look at it and I go, okay, I'm here. I'm present. I'm not showing up the way I want to show up right now. Okay, then I would do what I just shared right a few minutes ago. Or let's just say I'm having a really hard time to do that. We would use what we call in the IEP work the energetic xylophone. So the energetic xylophone says, if I'm here and I know my energy is not where it needs to be, I'm not going to fake it. I'm not going to fake going all the way up to a higher vibration state of like, amusement and fun and love. And this is so great. I'm not going to do that, because if I do that, you're going to feel my inauthenticity. I'm going to break all rapport with you. It's more efforting. It's more forcing. It's draining. I believe that's actually where a lot of our burnout does come from. It's because people are not aware of like how much they're forcing inauthentic emotions and energy. So instead, what I'm going to do is let's just say I'm at the energetic state of, or the energetic vibrational level of blame. Right before our call, something happens and my energy is really contracted. I'm in a state of blame. Okay, if I bring that energy into our conversation, it's not going to be so great. We're both going to suffer for it. All right, so I'm not going to cancel on you at the last minute, and I'm also not going to fake it. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my energetic xylophone. And I know for me, there are a couple of energetic states that I can jump into very easily, very authentically, that if I can get there, it shifts my whole vibration. So for me, I know, for example, curiosity, gratitude, and being of service. If I can go, okay, gosh, I wonder what he's going to ask me today. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited we get to have this conversation. I love it. I'm so grateful that Ari introduced us. Or contribution. I just want to serve. I just want to serve your audience. If I can hit any of those authentically, my heart feels that, my energy relaxes, and now I can actually come in and meet you in an authentic place. I might not be up here at like a 10, but I'm at a quality 7 or an 8. From here, now I'm fully present with you. That's going to shift my vibe up.
One of my favorite things to do with my team was at the end of every pre-shift, we would say one thing we were grateful for. And we worked together every day, 5 days a week together, right? So you couldn't say the same thing in the same week. And so the goal was over time to brainwash them, right? Is that they begin to look through their life. They know they're coming to work today. So they're going to have to figure out what that thing is. And then the next thing you know, they've just kind of refocused and reframed around gratitude. Also, because it's the last thing we do before pre-shift, they're in that headspace right before we open service. That was like a really great tool for me. But in those difficult moments where we're in a great space, but the person across from us, whether that is a customer or an employee or a spouse, how can we help them without saying, hey, here's what I'm going to do, Anese. I know you're really pissed right now. I'm going to adjust your energy, and then we're going to have a more productive conversation. How can we do it without, is there any way to influence other people's energy to create a more positive outcome?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you do what you just said, if you say, I'm going to adjust your energy right now, I'm just going to get really on.
Right. Nobody's going to adjust my energy. I'll tell you that.
You're going to create resistance. So now we got resistance. No. So what we have found is that, I mentioned like lowest vibration will win unless you're good at holding your state. So if you're in a good place, and I always call him George or Georgette is not, then it's just being really, really present, holding your state, Josh. So you hold your state. And then what I might do is I might just check in. Hey, George, how you doing? Do you need anything? 9 times out of 10, asking someone how they're doing, that actually will start to bring them up a little bit. Also, if you continue to hold your state, especially in a team meeting, you continue to hold your state and you don't get sucked into the lowest vibration, but you also don't judge it. Because the minute I judge George, I've just met the lowest vibration in the room because I've just brought judgment in. So instead, I'm going to notice it. I'm not going to get sucked into it. I'm not going to become it. I'm going to notice, okay, wow, George, something's going on with George. George, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Can I help you? George's probably going to come up a little bit from that place. George actually might need something. I remember, actually Zingerman's, I remember doing this with Zingerman's, and they had shared that sometimes they see that when they do an energy check and they give permission for people to say, I'm at a -4 right now, like I'm not having a good day, just the permission of that releases all that energy. So George is naturally, the trick here is to not have you get sucked into that and to match it, but also not to judge it. So this is why when we talk about this work, it is so important that each individual take full responsibility for their energy and taking care of it and cultivating and protecting it so that they can be a better service to the people around them. Because you can't change George's energy, but you absolutely can provide a place for him to step up if he wants to step up in it. And then sometimes what's going to happen is George's going to be like, yeah, I'm having a really bad day and I don't really care that I'm sucking the life out of the room right now. I'm good with that. That is probably a private conversation on the side going, hey, George, what's going on? Do you notice the impact that you're having? I've noticed that this has been going on for the last 4 meetings. What gives? Do you care? And if George cares, then there's some coaching to be done. If George doesn't care, then he's probably not good for your team. But the main thing, like, you got to hold your state, and in order to do that, you have to take such exquisite care of yourself to hold that energetic state.
What we're talking about, if we were to just boil it all up high level, is going to be positive culture. But I feel like in today's world, especially in my industry, positive culture is almost always equated with low standards. Everybody gets a trophy here. Nobody, like, we don't say anything that's going to upset anyone. Everybody's emotions are held sacred. And as a result, we don't push ourselves. We don't hold each other accountable.
It's a toxic positivity culture.
Agreed. And that's what I wanted to unpack with you is, what is the secret to holding people accountable in a way that makes them feel more invested, not more resentful?
Well, it's funny. I'm gonna back into it, because talking about culture, a culture is nothing but a bunch of human beings working together. So I wrote, my first book was called Contagious Culture, and my second book was called Contagious You. And Contagious Culture was written for teams and organizations to build a healthy, positively contagious culture. And the trick about that book was that when you read it, you bought it because you thought you're going to fix your culture and your team. But actually, I don't know if you've seen it or if you've read it, but when you actually get into it, the trick is, oh no, it's me, how I'm up. And so when, Contagious You was written a couple years later, because people still, after Contagious Culture, would be like, okay, cool, I'm glad I did that. My people need that. I don't need it, but my people need it. Now give me the culture change checklist. And I go, oh, no. Culture change checklist, creating positive culture, does not work if you're not being fully accountable for your own leadership and your presence and how you're showing up. So that's actually why I wrote Contagious You, was to get people to understand, like, it's you. So going back to your question about creating a positive culture, to me, again, it comes back to every single human being and leader in the organization taking full accountability for how they're showing up. I can't make other people be accountable. I mean, I pay them, they've got a job, et cetera. So there's that, but that's not really inspirational accountability. The way I can inspire accountability, and what I've seen work in the best leaders, is the way that they show up. They're so accountable that they inspire the people around them to do that just by who they are. So you get more and more of that. Now you have a bunch of positively, authentically contagious leaders working together. Now you have a positive, authentic, contagious culture. And Ari is a really great example of that. Since so many people know Ari, you go to Ari, you go to Zinger, you go to the Roadhouse, you will see Ari out there. He's pouring water. He is like, he's got a level of accountability for how he shows up, for how he leads, the care and whatnot. He doesn't need to hold anybody accountable. People are inspired to be accountable by him. Now, yes, you have your KPIs and your stuff you're accountable for every year, and your job, like, of course. But really, to me, what I'm always looking for, that I think gets people the most mileage, is, as a leader, am I showing up in a way that inspires accountability by who I am, and also has an honest conversation with my employee when they're not showing up, and says, hey, I'm noticing you are falling short. You committed to this, this, and this. You're not doing it. What's getting in the way for you? This is what I expect of you. Can you do that? That's a very beautiful way to inspire accountability versus being like, you're accountable to me and you're going to do this thing.
I was trying to figure out how to round out the conversation, because, like, I wanted it to be far reaching, and I wanted to make sure that it was actionable. And this was the question I came up with, which is, if you personally had to train the next generation of restaurant owners, what do you think is that one leadership principle that they would need to master in order to succeed?
Taking 100% accountability for their energy and what they bring to the table. 100% accountability for the experiences they're creating, the way they're taking care of themselves, how they're showing up, how they're communicating, how they feel. 100% accountability for that.
And as it relates to that, burnout is obviously going to be in the forefront of everyone's mind. How do they avoid that? How do we restructure our lives and our minds and our energy to avoid burnout?
I think that is a really important question. I think it's a very, very big conversation. I know that I think that Ari is onto a lot when he talks about he doesn't entertain anything that depletes his energy, and that's true. He's really good at doing that. I think that what I notice about burnout is a lot of burnout comes from the amount of mental bandwidth or mental lift that it takes to do rework, repeat ourselves, not feel seen, not feel heard, the mental energy that gets spent going, do I matter? Did this person like me? Like there's so much that's happening in here that I think that the more present we can be to where does our mind start to go off on all these tangents and we actually lose presence, I think the more we can actually get control over that, the less burnout we'll experience. Because I think burnout, see, to me, burnout, sure. I mean, here's the thing. I know people who work 100 hours a week and they're super happy. They're not burnout. And I know people that work 30 hours a week and they're burnout and they're barely surviving right now. And the difference between those are they on purpose? Are they doing work that lights them up? Are they taking responsibility for the experience they're creating? How are they thinking about things? And are they taking care of themselves? Like those are the main things that are different. And so I would say, like, how do we change that as a culture? I think, again, I feel like I feel a little bit like a record, but it's like coming back to every single one of us has to take responsibility for this first. And then I think you take responsibility for it as a leader, then you bring it to your team and you go, hey, how do we want to design for this so that our team is has more energy, and if burnout's something we're struggling with, what do we want to design for? Then you can take it to a whole organization. I know our team has this conversation a lot because obviously we live in this work and it's part of our jobs to help figure this out. But, we are constantly having conversations around, all right, how are we feeling about the energy of the team? How are we feeling about the quality of our meetings? How are we feeling about our accountability and how we're getting stuff done? Where are we spending unnecessary energy? And we'll find stuff every month. We'll do like an inventory and we'll be like, oh, you know what? This is such a waste and such a drain of energy. Let's not do this anymore. And so it is just being really conscious and present to what are you doing that is depleting your team and your individual energy stores, I think.